Good evening. I am Kamau Kujichagulia. This is On the Case with Kamau Kujichagulia, where each week we present an interesting folk from the Trenton area or the Trenton and vicinity area to discuss, well, what's important to them right now and also what we hope is important to you. This week we have running for Trenton City Council, Trenton City Council-At-Large, Michael Ranallo. Hi, Mike.
Good evening.
How
are
doing?
you? Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Michael, is it Michael or Mike?
Michael.
Michael. Okay.
Yes, sir.
For our viewers who don't know you, tell us a little about who Michael Ranallo is.
Okay. Well, we just said my name is Michael Ranallo, and I am heading into 20 years of living in the city of Trenton. I'm a homeowner in the West Ward. I grew up in West Windsor / Princeton Junction, went through their school system. I have 2 degrees, one in political science, one in criminal justice. I work in the high-tech field for a company that manufactures and designs high-power laser diodes for manufacturing. I've been at that job for 20 years, and I work in quality management in that job. In my spare time, I am on the executive board of Trenton Animals Rock, which is an organization that helps shelter animals in the region, moving out of the shelter, finding homes and things like that. Yeah, I mean, that's the nickel tour of my background. I don't know if you have any questions or, anything else you'd like to know.
You say you're on Trenton Animals Rock. What is that?
Correct. That's an
is
organization that works with shelter animals in the region to move them out of the shelters and into adoptive homes to keep them from being euthanized.
Okay, now is that the one that was at the Trenton Animal Shelter? Was that group part of that?
Yes, we were recently under contract with the city of Trenton, and in a few months ago they decided not to renew our contract, so we ceased relations with the shelter.
So what was that about?
I'm not quite sure, actually. I wrote the RFP. I wrote the last 2 RFPs, the one that was accepted prior and the one that was up for consideration. It seemed like a home run, but for some reason the current council did not want to renew the contract or continue the relationship. I racked my brain to figure out why, because it just seemed like a common sense thing to do. We were doing a great job, and our dollars brought in donations versus the amount the city spent was a very equitable relationship. And we were bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations to help manage and run the shelter. But the reason why it wasn't renewed, I couldn't answer that question. And the base answer would be politics, I suppose. I can't think of any other reason.
So they never gave you. What is that? Is that me making that noise? They never gave you a reason why who they bring in. Who runs it now?
I think the city increased some staff and have a pool of volunteers currently, but I couldn't tell you who they are.
Okay.
And no, to answer your question, I was never given a real explanation of why the contract was not renewed.
Okay, because I remember reading something about that, like you said, a few months ago. So I didn't know you were actually a part of it. Okay.
Yeah, I wrote the RFP.
Okay, so now you're running for council-at-large, right?
Yes, sir. Council-At-Large.
Now that is, you would be representing everybody in the city of Trenton.
The entire city, not just one ward, but all 4 wards.
Okay. Okay. So why are you running?
Repeat yourself, please.
Why are you running for council-at-large?
Oh, Since I moved into Trenton, I've always followed the local political scene very closely. Um, and I finally reached an age and a place in my career where I could devote more time to it than just being an observer. And I've always wanted to serve the city, so council was just my choice and my way of being able to serve the city, give back, do some positive things, and hopefully, make a mark with some improvements.
Okay, a lot of people are saying that council is dysfunctional. You know what I'm going to do? I think it might be me having these issues. I'm going to change my microphone and camera, okay? I'm sorry. Please
Sure.
forgive me. Let me see. Okay, and microphone. Let's go to this one. Okay. Hello. Anyway, I hope that's better.
You sound you sound fine.
Okay, very good. Um, okay, a lot of people say the council is a bit dysfunctional right now. You want to join that, or is your intent to make it a lot more functional than it is?
I would agree that council's dysfunctional. This is probably the most dysfunctional council I've seen in place since I've been here. Um, yeah, my idea is to just go in, leave the personality at the door, work cooperatively with the other 6 council members, and hopefully make decisions um, via the majority that are the best for the city. I don't like what I'm seeing now with the infighting and the constant bickering and the no voting on something just because you're angry. That does nothing to serve the city, which is what they're there for. And yeah, I don't like what I've seen for the last 4 years. It's part of why I'm running, is to help change that dynamic and just make us, when outside people look at us and they specifically look at our council, they leave with a very bad impression, and that leaves a very bad impression of the city. So maybe we don't get people coming in to do development that we would normally if we seemed like a functional, rational city. Or you know um, the state looks on us and says things like, well, we still want to maintain oversight of Trenton because of this dysfunction. And my goal would be to change that. I'd love to remove a little bit of the state oversight, if not all of it. I don't think that can be accomplished in 4 years. In fact, I think the first 2 years of this upcoming council are going to be spent reversing and trying to improve a lot of the decisions that the previous council had made. But I would like to see an improved dynamic on council and more cooperation and less fighting and the nonsense that we've seen. So yeah.
Hmm. You know, people say that you're saying that it's that the council is dysfunctional right now. Is it because they don't agree with the mayor that you're saying it's dysfunctional, or what?
I think that it's a little bit of personalities, a little bit now of current political ambitions of some of the members, but that doesn't go back for 4 years. Um, the inability of them to make cohesive decisions that are obviously good and should move forward, and instead get pulled into the weeds and start arguing on the dais and arguing with the mayor, as we've seen. I mean, certain members did not start off on a very good foot at all with the current mayor. It was contentious from the start, in my opinion, and I've watched it very closely. Um, so I think it's a combination of everything. I just think that a lot more effort could have been put into looking at the bigger picture versus a little pettiness. Like I've seen constantly, certain members will raise subjects not like how the conversation goes, and then just vote no because of that. And that's not the way to do it. You need to leave that stuff out of it and just concentrate on making decisions and moving things that are best for the city, not necessarily what would make you look the best, or say something just because you're angry. It's not the way to do it. So the answer to your question is I believe it's a combination of many things.
Okay. Now, all right. Now you're on council. Let's say you get elected. You're on council. What is it that you?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's say you're elected and you're now sitting on council. What's the number one thing you want to do to help the city of Trenton? Did you hear me?
The number one thing that I would do to help this is you broke up slightly.
Right. Yeah. What is the number one thing you would do to help the city of Trenton now that you're on council?
The best thing to do as a council person would be to look at the initiatives and projects and things that the city brings to council and work with the other 6 members to move smart and intelligent ideas forward. My job as a council person is the checks and balances on the administration. So what I need to do is focus on the things that the contracts and the development deals and the directors that are brought forward to be hired and those directors' plans that they make for their individual departments. Pay very close attention to those things along with 6 other people, because I would be completely pushing my agenda, because I would move nothing, I would be ineffective, and we would end up with a little bit of the dysfunction that we see currently. The best thing that I could do is to work cooperatively with 6 other members and always focus on the bigger picture, is making decisions that are best for the entire city. That's what I would focus on. And I can't really say like what would be I mean, I can tell you actually the number one thing I would do was to roll back some of these silly things that were put in place by the current council president that kind of limit,
such as what,
or maybe increase the council president's power. But well, you have a council president that's in place for 4 years currently. There are things like when a resolution or something on the floor that's introduced by a council member doesn't move, it cannot be introduced again for 1 year, which to me is silly. Things like that are currently in place that I don't believe should be in place, because it limits the effectiveness of a council member. And speaking to the council presidency, I believe that everybody should get that experience, because right now we're essentially losing most of council and we're going to have an entirely new council. Somebody with no experience might become council president. And if you're on council currently and everybody gets some of that experience, if the council turns over, and the ward council seats will turn over in 2 years now. So you want to have that experience coming in so the council's not all green. Because, there's a lot to know when you're sitting up there.
Yeah, there's a lot of time involved too, isn't there?
Yes, sir. It's classified as a part-time job, but I would venture to say that current council members probably put 25 to 30 hours a week into the job, possibly more. And that's not including the ABC meetings that they run.
Okay. Now, 25 hours a week for a, what was it, $250 million budget? Do you think that's enough? Do you think we ought to start looking at a full-time council? I don't know if you heard
the idea of a full-time council has been floated, but you asked if it should be a full-time job.
Right, you got it.
The idea of that has been brought up before, but the problem there are the salaries that it would require. I was told that the city could not afford to pay those salaries. I mean, you would probably have to pay a full-time council person $70,000 or more to make it attractive, plus benefits. And right now, the city does not have that money. I mean, the current council voted to increase their salaries by a few $1,000s, and the public was not happy with that. Now, I don't know if that was based on the performance of the current council versus whether they deserve it or not. But there was pushback from the public on that small increase.
Have you spoken with Council President McBride about why she passed these rules and regulations for council?
No.
Okay. On Facebook or whatever, the mayor puts comments about, we presented tearing down these houses to council. They said no to it. But my question to him is, well, why? Why did they say no? Does he know why? Do people know why they're refusing some of the mayor's suggestions? Do you know why?
No, I don't know why. And it's always difficult when you politic on social media because you're presenting one side of the story. You can't really get the other side of the story. I don't think any governmental decisions have been made on, Facebook or Facebook comments or anything like that. I think it goes back to the contentious relationship again, where the mayor might try to push initiatives and get them done. And because certain members of council, especially now we have a 3-3 council, and it's very easy for things to not move, they would just prevent that because no particular reason. And it's unfortunate, but in my opinion, that's the reason that a lot of things haven't moved.
Yeah, I know some of the people sitting on council, especially those that vote no, some of them that vote no. And, I've always found these people to be genuine people who have reasons why they don't do what the mayor wants them to do. Talking to one of them, they say that the mayor came to them with something that was illegal. So it wasn't that they were against the idea, they were against the presentation, and they just wanted him to go back and make it legal so that they could then, in good conscience, vote for it, in favor of it.
I think that there's always time during the meeting, during a vote, or even after the meeting at their civic comments to explain those things. And it could be valuable, speaking to what you just said, that if a council person voted no and felt that strongly, where you actually think that there's some illegality to what's being presented to council, to explain that in a way that the public could understand it during the meeting, so that there's nothing left on the table after the meeting, that somebody's extremely clear on, I'm voting no on this because I feel this, and I would like this to come back to me so I would be more comfortable with it. But I just want the public to know that that's why I voted no on it. I've seen a lot of cases where the vote is just no, and the public is left guessing. And I think it would be beneficial if maybe the officials use that time during the meeting to explain some of those the heavier decisions. You don't have to explain every single vote, but
Right.
when you say like I feel like something's illegal, it would be nice to get the why behind that and educate the public, because you have a chance to educate the public when you're sitting up there too, which is also important.
Okay, you're right. I think there's a total lack of communication, not only with council and mayor, but with council, mayor, and the public at large.
And also I don't mean to interrupt, but to interject, it just came to my mind. Those council people are also on social media, just like the mayor. And if the mayor goes on and says, council voted this down because blah, blah, council people can also use social media to communicate with their constituents and educate, like I just said. And it's also a more free forum where they can express a longer feeling and have back and forth communication with residents, because they can comment and there can be a back and forth dialogue. I don't see our current council using, I think, their social media and online presence to that extent, which I think would be to their advantage.
Right. It would be. It would be to the advantage of everyone, the
Yes.
council, the mayor, and the public, if
Correct.
they used it instead of as a bully pulpit. Okay. Let me move on a little bit now. As a member of city council, would you be in favor of a reparations uh, a, a resolution coming out of Trenton City Council?
Yeah, if a resolution for reparations did come before City Council, I would certainly be in support of that. I mean, obviously, that's nothing not that can't be moved on a local level. That's a state issue going up to a national issue. But I think that if the city of Trenton presented a resolution on that specific topic and it was supported by the council, it would give credibility to the city of Trenton that yes, we're aware of it. Yes, we support it as a governing body, and we'd like to see some action on that on a state or national level. So I would absolutely support that.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, because in the past, I wouldn't say just past 4 years, but in past 40 years, that has never come up
No,
as a point in Trenton, which is to me is I don't understand that at all. You know, I look at that black brown people have struggled, have been beat up for many years, and that they need to be repaired. Okay, so you're a criminal justice major too, right?
political science major, criminal justice. I have another 2 degrees, two different degrees.
Okay. Now, did you plan with the political science major? Did you plan eventually to get into politics, or you just saw that it was so bad right now that you had to do something?
No, when I mean that college was a long time ago, but
Well, that's true.
I always wanted to go to law school, and unfortunately, I it was in a situation where I could not afford that. So I always had a mind for science and engineering and stuff like that. So I moved into a career in the high tech industry, which I've fit very nicely into and function. I've been in my same employer for 20 years, so I've been successful there, and that's worked. But initially, my goal was law school.
Okay. Okay. Now, I was reading on your website about the gates in Calwater Park. Now, that's
Yes.
been one of my pet peeves ever since they put those gates up and closed off the park. Okay.
Hmm.
And I've always looked at, I've seen that it has a racial content to it. Now, on your website, you say that framing this as a racial issue is counterproductive and will lead nowhere. But America, for the past 400 years, has been a racist country. Everything that I've seen has been a race issue. And now you're saying that Calwater Park isn't a race issue? Are you saying
I
that
think
racism is done and over with?
no, 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 absolutely not. What I was saying was that the way that the people that were out in the park protesting the gates was doing it was they were presenting it as a racial issue. Now, I use the park. I'm white. Those gates prevented me from, if I wanted to take my car through there, it affected me just as much as anyone else. What I meant was that if you wanted to make an argument about opening the gates and keeping the gates open in the park, explain the reasons why they wanted the gates open. I believe that the gates were put there to prevent vehicular traffic from that outer loop. I looked at a map of where the gates were. I actually put a little map of the park together and marked on where the gates were. And there was a very logical progression of where they always were. Um, Me particularly, I prefer the gates in front of the playground area just because of it will prevent cars from going in front of where the children are playing, and it's just that one stretch. Um, I see that I believe they're all open now. But my initial point with what I'd said, to go back to what you had just said, was that framing it the way that certain people did just seemed a little much to me for the way they could have explained why they wanted the gates open instead of just going out there and having protests and things like that. And even those protests were very short lived. They said they would be out there every weekend until the gates were open. I think it happened twice, and the entire issue just kind of went away. So
Yeah, I think they were grandstanding, to tell you the truth. I don't know.
I just
However,
think
I've
that
noticed that when there are white events at Ellerslie, when the symphony orchestra comes out to the pavilion and other white events, the gates are open. But everyday black people can't go in, can't take their cars in there. And I'm saying, whoa. And I've discussed this with the mayor. And I said, wait a minute, hold it. This isn't right. How come white folks get to openly use this park, but black people, young black people, don't?
I would side 100% on your side of this issue 365 days a year. Any event in the park that needs to have the gates open, the gates should be open. It doesn't matter what the event is. Nobody should be excluded from that park for any reason at all. It doesn't matter
Oh,
black, white, Latino, anything.
Michael, you said that framing this, making this a racial cultural issue is simply nonsense. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's like you just dismissed racism in America.
No. I'm not saying that there's no racism in America. What I said was, in order to get their point across on the gates in the park, perhaps a different avenue would have been chosen. They could have logically explained why they wanted the gates open. Instead, I saw, you just said, some videos and protests and things that were, you could classify as grandstanding, and I would agree with you. And I think that the approach could have been refined and explained, this is the reason we want the gates open. And if it was me, I would have taken a tour of the park and explained and shown where every gate was closed and the reason that I wanted it open. I wouldn't have
Would
stood
you?
at one gate and did what they did. I'm not disagreeing with you about racism in America. I'm not saying there's none. I will side with you 100% on that.
Would you support opening the park as per your diagram?
I believe they did.
Yeah, but again, that's politicking. It's getting close to election, if
And
the election's
I'm
over,
not gonna.
with, they may very well go back.
Well, if I'm on council, I have something to say about that. I'm not gonna let the mayor off the
What
hook
would you
here either,
say? What would
because
that something be? That's what I'm interested in.
what would I say? I would say exactly what I just said, that the gates should be open in that park. Nobody should be excluded from that park. And if there's
Okay.
a safety reason, or like I said, they want to keep the gate closed in front of the playground, which I actually might support because I'm there a lot and I see kids playing in that road all the
I
time,
can see that.
I could support that. But if you just want to close a gate to prevent access, I would not support that.
Okay.
Not at all.
Before my mom died, she wanted to go to Calwater Park, but at 98 years old, what am I supposed to park the car and then we're supposed to walk a quarter mile across the park? That couldn't happen. So I'm very adamant about that part. Okay.
I'm not going to let the mayor off the hook on this one too, because it seems like those gates were just closed overnight with no notice. So,
Right.
and that
Right.
I can see as a complete surprise and people not being happy with, because you just show up one day and they're closed and there's no real, and they weren't even signs on them. They just were closed.
Right.
So
Right.
that I wasn't too fond of that approach either.
Michael Ranallo, we appreciate your being here with us, and I thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's been good. It's been a good show. Thank you very
I
much.
hope it was constructive. Thank you, sir.
It has been. It has been. Okay, my people, next week we are going to have Algernon Ward, who is a candidate for North Ward Council for City of Trenton. Algernon Ward. You know the brother. Algernon has been around for many years. He's a scientist, a chemist. He's also a reenactor of the Black contribution to the Civil and to the Revolutionary War. He's also the brother who is trying very hard to bring a bank, a Black credit union to the city of Trenton. So we want to hear what Algernon has to say about some of these issues. And so we'll see you again. We're on every Thursday, 8 p.m. I appreciate so much the people who come on our show and those who actually watch our show. We appreciate that so much. So I'm Kamau Kujichagulia, and I'm going to say good night to you right now. All right, good night.
Good night.